Yeah, actually, Jimmy, it wouldn't be bad to get to Jimmy now. So, Jimmy's finding excuses to cut ties. I think Jimmy feels a little bit weighed down by some of his, was it progressive commitments, leftist, populist? I don't know. First one, Cornel West. He's not happy. Cornel West didn't
Put him
do
as
well.
czar of information.
Well, yeah, and here we'll play this. I mean, I watched the segment Jimmy did, and I mean, there's a few times that Anderson Cooper maybe talks over Cornell. I'll be honest. I think
I mean, did you watch the full CNN thing?
Yeah, I mean, I watched what Jimmy played of it.
Look, I mean, I will agree in the general sense that, West's Cornel West is just like an incredible communicator of certain kinds of ideas. And the reason why he's so successful at this, in my opinion, is because he tries to take the truth of what maybe his interlocutor, the person he's talking to, is saying, and like take that and sort of extrapolate that and maybe make a point through that. Right. I can see maybe as a political movement how that might be frustrating. Right. I mean, is that fair to say? Because
Absolutely.
I watched his
I had
interaction with Anderson, and we're just like with anybody. It's like, all these people are getting mad at us, Matt, which again is amazing, since we are establishment corporate shills. For saying that we like Cornel West. People are getting mad at us because of the DeSantis essays, right? And like for me, like the logic of that is like very classic Cornel West, right? Which is that like, DeSantis is like doing all this stuff and saying, oh, we need to go back to classical education or whatever. So what Cornel West is doing there is saying like, oh, well, DeSantis, you like classical education, let's do it in public high schools in Florida or the country, right? And that is like the Cornel West kind of like argument, like through and through, that those things, like, yeah, whatever, like I'm not even like trying to exonerate him from the frustrations people have with him, but like that's just like Cornel West logic of how to do media, right?
Yeah, he's a mensch, and probably too much so. And that's the thing, is I made the exact same complaint. I
You
don't
know
if
what,
I'm
Matt, if you could refresh, you might need
Yeah.
to, because you're a little nuts.
Cool.
But look, I mean, like, this is the thing about West is that, like, I mean, I'll say it again if I need to. Voting for Cornel West will be one of the easiest things I've ever done in my political life. Cornel West represents my politics in a way that is stronger than probably anyone else that I've seen on this kind of stage and scale. Like I like Cornel West. That's that.
Yeah.
I guess is all that I'll say about that. So like these like but like understanding also, like in the same way that like Bernie, sometimes like I wish Bernie would have been harder on the socialist aspect of his background, and that would sort of annoy me. I also recognize over time that's like, oh, this is why Bernie's an effective communicator, because whenever people try to make him talk about Cuba or China, right, even though I might personally want Bernie to like go into a thing about Cuba and China, Bernie would just refuse and would just stay on message. I think people should have health care. I think people should, in this country, shouldn't be working for poverty wages, whatever. This is the Cornel West style, which I think is very effective, which is like, hey, brother, I hear what you're saying. Here's what I'm saying. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, I mean, long preamble, because what we're about to hear from Jimmy Dore is not even like a good faith criticism on that level of Cornel West.
It gets very personal. I mean, I know I have extended. I forget what the comedian Metzger, who's always there, but he's like, don't call him Brother Anderson. And I've said, like, look, if starting with DeSantis, I don't want to hear you call him Brother DeSantis either. But that is like who Cornel West is.
That's the West style.
Right? Yeah, and so like
that's also why he's better than you.
Exactly. Sorry. Right. That's why. Yeah. Exactly right. And so, but anyway, Jimmy is not able to reach our sort of shill levels of enlightenment on Cornell, and he takes it very personally here.
And I've offered to donate my time to their campaign.
Amazing start. Sorry to cut it out, but just like, Jesus fucking Christ, man. Oh, Jimmy Dore, like a loser, has offered his time to Cornel West, and they haven't accepted.
I
Right?
want to see that. Speaking of Cornell's, gregarious mensch nature, I want to hear how he curves Jimmy's offers to volunteer for his campaign. Like, no, brother Jimmy. Like,
Yeah, no.
we're good. I would love to see that.
Let's play the rest of this.
Every 6 ways of Sunday. And then he goes on, and that happens? Do you think Anderson Cooper would be able to do that to fucking me? A moron. This guy's a genius, Cornel West. I'm a moron, and I would have mowed through Anderson Cooper.
Sorry to keep pausing, but yeah, he is smarter than you, which is maybe why he's not taking your fucking advice, asshole.
Run, Jimmy. Bro, the People's Party needs a candidate. Do it and mow through Anderson Cooper. Be more pro Russia invasion than Cornel.
I will just say this. And like, I try to stay out of the flame wars on this kind of thing, but like, oh my Lord, if y'all don't remember before this Cornel West thing, and we talked about the People's Party and all this kind of stuff, we don't even need to get into it, right? But before Cornel, remember, there was this whole ground game about Jimmy. And I said it on the show, and I'll say it again, that like one of the things that there's, Jimmy will be our candidate for president. And the reason why he's so good is he's got such a big YouTube channel. I will just say, maybe later in my life at my expense, anyone's argument for running for president or high office that starts with, they've got a big YouTube channel. It's probably a bad way to start a plug for why this person should be a candidate for president.
He did that a couple times, and then there was one time where it's like, hey, encourage Jimmy so his wife lets him run. Remember that? It's like
bizarre.
What are we doing? That's the thing, is like, or do we have more? We do have more.
Oh yeah, we have way more. More. Yeah. Sorry, I cut it early.
Did no one tell Cornel West, you have to have your message and you don't stop talking? You don't let Anderson Cooper interrupt you until you get your message out. Did nobody ever ran a campaign over there? No one ever went on an interview? No one knows how to do an interview. An adversarial interview. I think fucking Christ. I do.
Well, I think he doesn't. I don't think
Jesus Christ.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's going to win.
He needs a therapist, man.
Oh, he 100% does. And
like, the thing is, like, look, I think what I want to make clear from this segment is none of this is him attacking Democrats. Cornel West not running as a Democrat, running as a Green Party, third party. I don't give a shit about Jimmy like not voting for Democrats. I think I am interested in, say, describing a move from anti-vote blue no matter who, which also not a vote blue no matter who person, to a lesser evil is a dumb strategy and you're a moron for believing in it, to I'm going to vote lesser evil for this Republican, which is, I would predict where Jimmy goes on some of this stuff. But oh crap, I can't see my clips here.
It's my fault.
I got it.
No, yeah.
This is that's old. Let me do this one. So he also recently went after Starbucks for a similar sort of thing. Like, he's just pissed at messaging, and with it, basically doing the exact same thing of like, and look, fuck. Well, let me just play a little bit of this.
Come and go, leaders and baristas. I've seen the space change along with that. I've seen people of color. I've seen queer partners get targeted. And I've watched partners all around me burn out to their last straw.
Why? What's happening?
This actually makes me sad, dude. All that crap.
What is I don't. So they're getting burned out till you said you love the job and you love the people. So now articulate what's happening, so we can get behind you.
All these
now, Jimmy, I think here, very clearly triggered by her mentioning POC, and the thing is, like, Starbucks literally had, and Jimmy might have missed this because he's been participating on the other side of it, had to change their guidance with regards to what they're going to allow with regards to LGBT displays in store and stuff like that. Like, I have no doubt that Starbucks baristas and people on the front lines of all sorts of different workplaces have had to do with a lot of homophobic shit.
Oh, 100%.
Because of this stuff. And so like this act of like, this is part of their job, Jimmy. Maybe trust the workers when they tell you, and like, maybe they're not expressing it in, I don't know, maybe they're not the burly, like, I don't know what white guys that you're expecting.
I mean, like,
like
exactly. What do they want here? I mean,
yeah.
Look, this is something that pisses me off. When you see this criticism on a whole host of issues, and like what it really boils, like, not from Jimmy, but like from Jimmy, certainly, but like from like a lot of different groups of people, where it's just like, why is it not me? Why am I not the one who's the video is on, like, on Twitter right now that everyone's responding to, right? That's what this is, right? There's no real argument here. It's just like, oh, I don't think these people are really media trained like me, the genius.
Right.
I mean, it is some of the most selfish shit you could ever imagine. And I think there's a couple more seconds of this clip here, but it's just like, it's absurd. And like we opened the show. Sorry, we opened like before we teased the show about Jimmy with me sort of saying, it's like, you know, with all these folks, it's like I try and have a little bit of sympathy because while I disagree with a lot of these folks on strategy and things like that, if like the crux of where they're coming from is that they don't think that the movement is radical enough, that is willing to take enough risks, that is willing to fight, all this kind of stuff, you know, even if I disagree at the outset, like I want to hear it because like I am very sensitive. Like I never want to get to a place where I'm ever telling people, for example, like calm down, right? But effectively, that's what Jimmy Dore is doing, who's supposedly the radical, you know, guy, and he's exposing himself as a careerist, like through and through.
And I'll just put a little bit more of this, and then the first time he crossed this line that I don't think he crossed. Fucking go after the Democrats all you want. Going after workers when they're exercising power is something you don't fucking do. Even if you don't like what this girl's saying, which I would say, like, you know, take a second listen, but even if you don't, like, fucking skip over it. Don't devote time to your fucking show to
Matt, could you imagine, like, I feel like if I were to do it or you were to do it on this program, if we were to, for example, cover like a Starbucks strike, right? And like you, for whatever reason, or me, or vice versa, right? We're to just be like, oh, the messaging of this is bad. That we would ever put that on this program, right?
We're just like, okay, we'll not play that. We'll just make the points ourselves.
What the hell are you doing?
Sir, to the multi-billion-dollar corporation that is probably exploiting her.
Probably.
So, again, messaging is really important. Right now, the writer's strike. I read, again, their messaging is not good.
Yeah.
The writer's strike messaging is not good at all.
Well, they ran most of the good writers out of the business, and all that's left is something like this.
And so
is something like this.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, go watch Starbucks and the Writers Union. Great job for Labor Jimmy there. The first time he did something like this was during COVID, though. And here's just a short clip. And I think it sort of speaks for itself.
And the Chicago Public Schools Teacher Union are so fear-mongered, they just voted to end in-person school. They are at a higher risk of contracting the Omicron cold. Yes. Yeah. They are at a less risk for severe disease. So what you're saying is we're using the word risk now to describe the symptoms of a cold. So kids are at greater risk of catching something that will present as a cold.
Top 5.
So that's Jimmy once again there downplaying the actual cause. They'll scream bloody murder and say, actually, you're some sort of Mengele for supporting vaccines. Guess what? COVID-19 is a leading cause of death for children in the U.S. despite relatively low mortality rate. That was that phase. That was Omicron. You look at when child started dying from COVID, that was that one. Those teachers were absolutely right. And he used his platform to say they were Fauci fearmongers.
Look, I mean, like this is somebody who has exposed himself time and time again, who will put his own personal brand over the movement, and you know, with the Starbucks stuff and with the and with these teachers, it's despicable, absolutely, but like it fits right with the kind of bullshit that he's saying. Him not being able to sort of stand behind Cornel West, who is doing a really great job at pursuing and pushing a lot of these things. I'm sorry, it exposes exactly what his critics have been saying for a long time, that like all of these criticisms have very little to do with the messaging or the strategy or anything like that, and everything to do with the fact that, as Jimmy said at the beginning of this clip, he has been telling them he will tell them how to speak, and they haven't been listening to him. And if we could, Matt, just like for clarity's sake, like
Mhm.
and I'm sorry, I had to pull this from Twitter, so I don't know what Russia American Daily is or whatever.
It's where you get all your
Not
talking
an
points.
indictment. Not yeah, it's where I get all my content. Not an indictment or a condemnation. I just don't know what it is. But like, let's just watch like this Cornel West clip, right, from this Anderson Cooper conversation that Jimmy thinks that Cornell's fucking up so immensely on.
No sound. Oh, there we go.
I want to ask you about the war in Ukraine, because I saw you tweeted out, you said NATO is an expanding instrument of U.S. global power that provoked Russia into a criminal invasion and occupation of Ukraine. You said this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation could lead to World War III. We must stop the war and war crimes, including cluster bombs used by all parties, and embark on diplomatic talks that should lead to a just peace. You believe, I mean, how are you going to bring all sides to the table on Ukraine? And do you really believe that NATO provoked Russia into invading Ukraine?
Well, when Russia was promised that NATO would not move 1 inch, and then a few years later, you got 13 former Soviet related countries.
But wait a minute. No, but you're talking about in 1990, there was an agreement signed that
right.
NATO would not move into East Germany, but actually nothing was said about further east. And it was, at the very least, it was ambiguous. You could.
Just saying really fast, so I have to mute two things. But what here, right? That like, well, East Germany. So then, what does the rest of Eastern Europe mean on this kind of agreement? Anyways, Cornel West is about to fucking put this down really well for folks, but just not let that kind of shit fly.
There's an argument
It
to be
was
made.
formal and informal talks, but I mean, the great George Kennan, who's probably had the finest minds of the establishment when it comes to foreign affairs. He said he doesn't understand why NATO needs to exist any longer, because it's defensive. Well, the collapse of the Soviet Empire meant, in fact, you no longer even needed NATO. Europe could come up with its own security, but
it certainly,
NATO
but it
has
doesn't
been
seem like that, because the
as
people
an arm of the American empire. That's
you don't
that's the challenge.
You don't believe, though, that the people of Ukraine right now need NATO to defend against Russian aggression?
Well, the people of Ukraine right now who are suffering, and I'm in deep solidarity with their suffering, they are being caught between this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation. Federation. I would have followed George Kennan. I would have abolished NATO right after the collapse of the Soviet Empire, and I would have tried to welcome Russia into the nation, the community of nations, rather than trying to push them against the wall. We know that their system of repression and domination is one in which they're going to feel as if their backs are against the wall. And I think you would probably agree that if Russia or China had missiles in Canada or Mexico targeting Washington, D.C., U.S. government would blow them to smithereens. That's how empires behave. You've read the history. I know the history. We're critical of imperial activity, no matter who it is, American, Russian, and what have you. But America is the most powerful empire in the world, in the history of the world, my brother.
This is the same clip.
So it's just like, look. I mean, sorry. I know you have some. I would just say, it's like, what the hell did Cornel West not do there that Jimmy Dore was going to be able to get him to do? Right? Agree or not? Right? Like, let's just get very clear here. If the focus of the subject is like what Jimmy's saying about this kind of thing, if like what is Cornel West not doing here that Jimmy's brilliant strategical mind would allow him to do? What Cornel West is doing right now is talking about an extremely difficult subject, right? One that the vast majority of Americans are not exposed to, right? And is like a difficult argument to make. We've talked literally like what on Monday, Matt, when we did our bonus episode, we talked about the way that Cornel West has been able to talk about the invasion of Ukraine by Putin, by Russia. And now Cornel West has been able to do a very good job of trying to present a different way of viewing this conflict versus the kind of typical American one. And I'm sorry, in that clip from the thing that Jimmy Dore was criticizing him for, I think Cornel West shows as good of a case as you're probably going to get on CNN or any other place.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like it's not controversial to say that there were lots of warnings before this invasion that people were saying about NATO. It's impolite to bring that up now because it did lead to a unjust invasion, and the thing that Jimmy wants is for Cornel West to say actually it's justified because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah,
and like the thing is like no, that's
which West is not going to say because he doesn't think that.
Yeah, exactly, because he's not pro-war, and like the question,
so it's not messaging.
Right. It's a position. It's policy.
It's insanity versus sanity.
Yeah, and like as to like what's his name? Anderson's question, like, do they need NATO? Like, well, immediately, like, I guess, but like ultimately, like, not. They need some sort of defensive alliance, but does America need to be the main sort of actor in that? And like, I think, like, I don't see any sort of reason to be any more sanguine about NATO as a defender of democracy now that Putin sort of like given them a brand new like lease on credibility. Like, I don't know, it's an entirely
but without even getting into like the weeds of the conversation and like the subject matter, it's just like, I don't know. I think if you were to pick a representative of a kind of anti-war position, Cornel West is probably one of the best people out there to do that. And whatever it is that Jimmy wants, I mean, it's just, I guess what I'm trying to expose here is like one that like, yes, I think that Cornel West like presents a very strong case here. But beyond that, the kind of fear mongering is the wrong word. The kind of outrage that Jimmy sort of puts forward, it's just completely illogical, right? It's not even about the position. It's literally just that he's not the guy behind this kind of thing that he's really pissed about. And I'm sorry, I think Cornel West has a much more nuanced and realistic position than Jimmy, who, from all that I can gather, and people correct me, I will admit I'm not a big Jimmy Dore show watcher. I think Cornel West has a much more humane and justifiable position than whatever you're getting on the Jimmy Dore show, which is reactionary, probably not in the technical term of reactionary. I mean reactionary in the sense of like, oh, is the mainstream media saying one thing? I'm necessarily going to say the other, right? Which is different from Cornel West, which is actually rooted in history, in reality, and in politics, and you can disagree with it, but it's a position that it has some firmness to it, versus what Jimmy's trying to push, which is just like, we're just going to flip the fuck out because CNN has a media channel, basically. Right.
Yeah. And it really is like, he just wants to, bring his audience and continue milking them as like the guru as he gets like farther and farther detached from anything that's like even remotely active politically. Like, right. Like, Cornel West is, to the extent that he can make any real waves, it's not that much. And that's even too much for Jimmy, I feel like. He doesn't want anything actually done.
And thank the Lord in heaven that instead of Jimmy Dore running as the kind of alternative third-party left candidate, that we have Cornel West. I will just say that.